Hey, BJ.
How's it going?
Hey, Talia. Yeah, I heard you say hello.
Friend.
I can barely hear you. You're cutting in and out a lot.
Okay, I'm not gonna use my now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Am I see now? Okay. I'm just gonna use my computer's microphone.
Okay.
Hi, Anna. I'll be right back.
There was a little window that popped up on mine, Talia, that says that you have low bandwidth.
Yeah, and with my
You-
it, can you guys hear me?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Uh, Coming on soon. She said she's having problems with.
Oh, did Talia drop out?
Hmm.
Oh no. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, if you're not, I'll be just taking a nap back here in my chair. But talk real loud. Just kidding.
Also, hi, Anna. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Brenna Yellow Thunder. I am a coworker of Talia's at IEN, and I'm just here to ask.
Midnight Express.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Can you pause the music, Brenna?
Yeah,
Are we live?
we are indeed.
Okay. So sorry, I've had technical difficulties, and we're still waiting for our other panelists, Miss Terry Kiana. So let's give her a couple of minutes. She was also having a hard time getting onto her computer, so let's give her a couple of seconds. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening. We have a robust panel here for you tonight. Again, we are going to be talking about Dooda, DISA, but also what we're talking about tonight is high pressure slurry ablation, a new technology that's being proposed on the Navajo Nation. But before we dig in, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. And I will kick us off. Ja, te she Talia Boyd and she Twitch eatney and shle toy haglini bushes chin ash che de she do tamba de chanella a quit aldina a san shle not na Georgia Asia Hawan. Thank you, and greetings, relatives. My name is Talia Boyd. I work as the Indigenous Environmental Network's Keep It in the Ground co-lead coordinator and mining organizer. And we are a part of a coalition of grassroots groups, including Diné Care, New Mexico Social Justice and Equity Institute, the Multicultural Alliance for a Safe Environment, and the Southwest Research and Information Center. And so some of our panelists here today are from those organizations. We're a coalition of grassroots groups who support the frontline communities facing adverse impacts, the cumulative adverse impacts from the nuclear fuel chain, from the mining, the milling, the enrichment, processing, transportation, waste, and storage. Navajo, we are a sacrifice zone here in the Southwest. We also consider ourselves a sacrifice zone. We've had a lot of uranium mining here throughout since the 40s. And so I'll go ahead and check there and have my panelists introduce themselves. And then I'm going to go back and kind of give you guys a brief historical context of uranium mining here in the Southwest, and particularly on the Navajo Nation. So I'm going to just go ahead and pass the mic over to Chris Shuey from the Southwest Research and Information Center. And he's going to go ahead and introduce himself. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, Talia. Yate and also Shea Krishui Inishe, Bel Deal Dasanil Nasha Aro Southwest Research to Information Center Banashnish, and Dohajo de Nebadzad Yastada. So I don't really speak very good Navajo, so this is going to be in English, but I've been on the staff of Southwest Research and Information Center now for 45 years, been working on these uranium impacts throughout the Southwest and especially in Denebakea. And so we've been reviewing the technicalities and the science behind the high pressure slurry ablation, and that's what I'll be talking about tonight. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Next, I want to go ahead and introduce Ms. Anna Rondon, and she's from the New Mexico Social Justice and Equity Institute. And we'll go ahead and have Anna introduce herself.
Greetings, Yate, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Anna Rondon. I'm Kia Ani Ado Nakaidina Bushishchin. My Chays are Tupaha. My Nollies are Nakaidina. I live in Chechelta, south of Gallup, among the oaks. And we'll be going over the reasons why we started this coalition to address the high pressure slurry ablation project on Navajo Nation.
Thank you,
Thank
Anna.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, our third panelist is Teresita Kiana. She also goes by Terry. Like I mentioned before, she's having some technical difficulties logging on, so we're going to give her a little bit of time. But she's with the Redwater Pond Road Community Association. She's a grassroots advocate who comes from the frontline community, and she can share her story as to how her community has been impacted by ablation. The Redwater Pond Road community is ground zero for the 1979 Church Rock spill, which is the largest radioactive spill in U.S. history to date. And so it's the #1 Superfund site on Navajo Nation, and this is the area where they're proposing on having this ablation technology initiate. So I'll have Terry introduce herself when she joins us. But for now, we're going to go ahead and kick off into our presentations. Excuse me. So I'm going to give a little bit of brief background of uranium mining here in the Southwest. So like I mentioned earlier, we've been inundated with uranium mining for quite some time, since the 40s, right? This is complements of the Cold War, the military-industrial complex, and the Manhattan Project, right? The Colorado Plateau is one of the areas in the U.S. that's very abundant with uranium. Wyoming is another area that's also abundant. According to the BLM, there's over 4,000 uranium mines that have been documented to produce uranium here in the U.S. 15,000 mines altogether throughout the 14 states here in the western side of the U.S. Most of those mines are here in the Four Corners, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and again in Wyoming with their big deposits of uranium as well. About 75% of those uranium mines are on federal and tribal lands, and it's estimated that 60 to 80% of all uranium in the US is located on tribal land, and 3/4 of uranium mining worldwide is on indigenous land. Another example of this where indigenous peoples have been displaced by uranium mining is in Australia. Our relatives in Australia have also been inundated with uranium mining and displaced because of that. So that's a little brief history of some of that. If you want to shoot to the next slide, it kind of just highlights some of those key hotspots on Navajo. We have some on the western side near Cameron, Arizona, near Grand Canyon. We got some near Monument Valley, Cove, Red Valley area near Shiprock. We again have the Eastern Navajo side, which is the Redwater Pond Road community in Church Rock. So those are kind of the bigger hotspots within Navajo. What happened is that when the market went down, these mines were abandoned and the waste was left. Again, compliments of the US government. And so we were stuck with the waste, and now we have over 520 abandoned uranium mines here on Navajo Nation alone. And so we're trying to figure out how to get rid of this waste. This is a problem worldwide with nuclear. This is why nuclear is a false solution. There is nowhere safe to put the waste anywhere in the world. This is a problem globally again. They propose putting sites in different places here in the US, including Yucca Mountain, which is a sacred mountain to Western Shoshone. That was taken off the table. And then they proposed the Holtec site here in southeastern New Mexico. That was also taken off the plate. But also we have the waste isolation pilot project here in New Mexico. It only accepts transuranic waste, but still it is a repository. And this is something that we've continued to come up against when we're trying to identify areas on where to take this this waste that has been placed and left behind. Right now, if you look at this map up in the Four Corners area in southeastern Utah, there's a small community of the Ute Mountain Ute, the White Mesa community. 4 miles from that community is the Energy Fuels mill. It's the mill. It's the last operating conventional uranium mill in the country, fully licensed. It's only supposed to take uranium ore. But now it's taking different waste streams from across the country, including waste from Japan and Estonia. And so this is very concerning. This facility sits right on top of the Navajo aquifer. There's a shallow plume beneath the mill that has already been contaminated. And if it goes any further, it could compromise the Navajo aquifer, which feeds that region, but also the Black Mesa communities all the way down to Hopi. So it's going to have a huge devastating impact if that mill, the contamination seeps into the aquifer. So we have a lot of really deep concerns around water contamination. When we're talking about high pressure slurry ablation, this is very water intensive. It requires a lot of water, very much like mining. And this technology was introduced to the Navajo Nation during the Nez administration. So it's been around for quite some time. They've been trying to push it. Right now, what's happening is that there's been a lot of closed meetings behind closed doors, right? Without much public information or input. And so there's not any transparency or accountability when it comes to the Navajo Nation EPA and even this DISA Technologies Incorporated. So this ablation technology was only one pilot project before they fully endorsed it to have a full-blown project on Navajo Nation. We don't think that's enough. We think there needs to be more studies. There needs to be more information shared through our outer communities. Our communities need to be informed. And again, where is this waste going to go? know that they're probably going to propose taking it to the White Mesa Mill, which our frontline communities have said no to. Why? Because again, it sits on the Navajo aquifer. We know that that aquifer is precious and that if it's contaminated, well, then that compromises the future of our future generations. So these are some of the moving pieces and some of the historical context when it comes to uranium mining within Navajo Nation. Right now in the Southwest, we do have active uranium mining. Here in Arizona, we have the Pinyon Plain Mine, which is located right next to Red Butte, which is a sacred landscape, not only to Havasupai, but also to other surrounding tribes. And they're actively mining uranium there, transporting it through the Navajo Nation to the White Mesa Mill. The feds and the state said that they have right of way to the highways through our homelands, even though we have a ban on transportation of radioactive materials through our homelands. They say that they have right of way. So those are some of the conversations. Again, too, we could talk about the 1872 mining law and how that continues to leave the doors open for mining, but also the fast tracking within this current administration when it comes to critical mineral mining, but also now uranium mining, since uranium has been put onto the critical minerals list. So these are things that we're seeing on the ground. We're seeing some fast track projects here in New Mexico around our sacred mountain of Mount Taylor. And so those are a lot of the conversations that we've been hearing. We also know that this ablation technology is not only going to be confined to Navajo Nation. We know that they're probably going to be approaching other tribal nations and trying to get their buy-in when it comes to ablation, which is why we are sounding the alarms. We want to alert people to what is ablation really? How water intensive is it? How have these deals and agreements been made, and how has this information been withheld for so long, right? So these are some of the questions that we've been hearing, and also contemplating ourselves within our coalition group. So the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency is promoting a resolution to develop this commercial partnership and solidify it, right, between them, the Navajo Nation, and DISA Technologies for this high pressure slurry ablation. And this is for the abandoned uranium mine waste on Navajo. This resolution was introduced to the Eastern Navajo Agency Council, and it was also introduced to the Eastern Navajo Land Commission. It was approved within their meetings without a written resolution being provided to tribal leadership and even to the public. So nobody was informed, and they just went ahead and put a stamp of approval on it, and really didn't ask any questions about what this ablation technology is. And although it's being described as a cleanup technology, quote unquote, and the funding source and the regulatory pathways all show that this ablation technology is a form of uranium extraction. We have a moratorium, a ban on uranium mining and extraction on Navajo Nation. So this violates our ban on uranium extraction. And there's a proposal being advanced quickly without transparency, public review, and Navajo-specific environmental analysis. So tonight we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and kind of unpack what's been happening. And just so folks know, there was a webinar before this one that was organized last month, and we can go ahead and drop the link in the chat for folks to check out. And that was a really great job from our community leaders here. Anna Rondon was a part of that, Wendy at City, and then Linda Williams from Nuclear Free Hawaii also presented on that and shared some really great information and helped unpack some of the technical pieces. So tonight we're going to continue that with Chris Shuey, Terry Kiana, and Anna Rondon. So we can go ahead and kick over to the next slide. And this is where I think I will go ahead and pass the mic over to Chris, and we can take this little PowerPoint down. Thank you. And Chris has a really great PowerPoint as well. Thank you, Chris.
Unmute. There we go. Okay, let me cue this up again. Sorry for the delay. There we go. All right, so again, my name is Chris Shuey. I've been at Southwest Research and Information Center for this is my 45th year. I have a background in environmental sciences and public health, largely through the University of New Mexico, and I collaborate with people at UNM to conduct research on these vexing questions of how to clean up abandoned uranium mines. And we have relationships with several communities on in the Southwest, from Laguna, Pueblo of Laguna, just west of Albuquerque, all the way over to Cameron, chapter on the Navajo Nation, where people have very similar problems of being impacted by abandoned mines. And so the question becomes, why is high pressure slurry ablation being proposed for remediation of abandoned mines on the Navajo Nation? And the answer is pretty simple. There are really only two methods to remediate abandoned mine wastes. You can dig them up, put them in trucks, and take them to a disposal facility, or they're left on site in what's called cap and place with evapotranspiration. And both of those have their both positives and their negatives. The picture on the left is the disposal site for the Moab, Utah uranium mill tailings. This was authorized by an act of Congress in the late 80s. They are nearing the completion of transporting um, 15, 16 million tons of uranium mill tailings off of the Colorado River, next to the Colorado River in Moab, by a 30-mile train up to this Crescent Junction site. And I show this because this is an example of a highly engineered facility that will provide long-term containment for those wastes. That's contrasted with the cap and place method, which is on the right. And you may not be able to read some of the fine print, but this is where you place dirt and plant plants, grasses on top of mine waste. You put they're putting these thin geotextile membranes on top of the mine waste, but they're depending. This is only 2.5 feet of cover that goes on the mine waste, and they're counting on evapotranspiration, which is a fancy word that means that in an arid climate, when precipitation falls on the ground, it is readily evaporated or desiccated. And the idea is that the cap would prevent the infiltration of fluids that would create leachate through the mine waste and potentially affect groundwater. Those are the two main um, uh, well, huh, why am I not going down? Huh. Hold on, oh, there it goes. Okay. And really, there's been quite a lot of controversy over proposals to move some of the mine waste out of the Church Rock area. This is the Redwater Pond Road community that Terry's going to talk about. An EPA decision was made over the last several years to transport that waste, more than 1 million cubic yards, sitting in a very difficult place at the base and on the side of steep slopes to the Red Rock landfill, 6 miles east of through. Um, and those are the only two, well, the Church Rock 1 mine and the Casamaro Lake Section 32 mine are really the only two mines that are being proposed for remote disposal. So most of the mines on Navajo will be done by cap and place. And there's, I have to say that there's broad dissatisfaction with the notion of cap and place, but once again, we lack alternatives. So, it's not unreasonable to think of looking for other alternatives. But the problem with high pressure slurry ablation, it was really, as Talia pointed out, was really designed as a mineral recovery operation. And in fact, the Colorado Department of Health back in 2016 decided that high pressure slurry ablation, or ablation of either ores or wastes was an act of processing. And the Colorado Department of Health has an agreement with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of the federal government that allows it to regulate uranium milling or processing in Colorado. So they made a determination that HPSA is a form of processing. We come now to just moving forward here. We come to this treatability study that was was paid for by EPA, was put together by EPA's contractor Tetra Tech, based on data derived from DISA Technologies pilot scale projects at 3 mines on Navajo, the Old Church Rock Mine and Church Rock Chapter, the Cavera Church Rock 1 mine, really in Coyote Canyon and Standing Rock, and chapters at the corner with Pinedale and Church Rock. And they processed about 200 pounds of mine waste collected at each of the 3 sites. Actually, it was less than that. And the reason to keep it below 200 pounds was that's termed a de minimis quantity, and is not, you don't have to have a license to do anything with it. But those volumes are very small compared to this commercial scale operation that DISA Technologies has described, ranging from 5 to 100 tons of waste per hour. That's not a typo, per hour. So in this pilot study, they ablated waste for 4, 8, and 30 minutes. This is a diagram from the treatability study that shows the process of high pressure slurry ablation. And down here at the bottom in this orange is a very general lay description of how the process works. It's much more detailed than I've shown here. I'm trying to keep this at a level where people can understand. So up here, you can see in this waste material up here, the water is shot at high pressure in both directions at the waste materials. This breaks up the sand grains. It also dislodges the coating on the sand grains called patina, and that contains the mineral resource. And these are actually the 5-gallon buckets that they used to collect the mine waste at these 3 sites. It later goes through a series of sieves, sieve. What's a good word for another good word for sieves? It's a mesh, a screen, and through various size fractions, it can sort out bigger size pieces from very fine pieces. And we'll talk about the water issue toward the end here. There's 2 principal waste streams involved in high pressure slurry ablation. What's called the coarse fraction, you can see on the right side, some looks like normal sand, right, with pebbles and things like that in it. Generally, the particles, soil particles, are less than 2 millimeters. And this is the material that would be left largely on the site of abandoned uranium mines. The fine fraction is the other stream, and it's generally particles with a diameter of less than 75 micrometers or microns. Very fine grained sands generated by the HPSA treatment. And it contains the highest levels of contaminants of concern, including uranium. This is the material that would largely be struck off of the site, and it would go to one of really 2 categories of places. A uranium recovery facility like Energy Fuels at Blanding, Utah, as Talia said, the only operating commercial conventional uranium mill in the United States, or to a licensed radioactive disposal facility. We want to know how the tests match up with various standards or what we call comparison values. Now, the treatability study cited Navajo Nation cleanup criteria. We are not aware that those criteria have been adopted as regulation by the Navajo Nation. The criteria were generated by Tetra Tech, the EPA contractor. And there's a report somewhere that defines the methodology that they use to create these comparison values. On this chart over here, under uranium and then radium, Tetra Tech's treatability study developed a criteria for cleanup of uranium at 3.2 parts per million or milligrams per kilogram dry weight. You can see in the first row up here that that's a little bit more than the crustal average of uranium. And uranium is ubiquitous. It's more abundant on the surface of Mother Earth than even gold. But as long as it stays in the ground, it's relatively geochemically immobile and doesn't go very far. But once it's released and is rapidly oxidized and it gets to the surface, that's when it creates the problems. You can see that Tetra Tech also developed a standard or a criteria for release for what they called Navajo Sheep Camp. It's not clear what they mean by that. And then Navajo Open Space. And so those end up being, up to, 8 times greater than the crustal average. Radium is a nasty actor. It is a potent human carcinogen, highly radiotoxic to people. Its presence in mine waste drives much of the risk assessment and much of the methods to contain waste. It's the principal hazard in uranium mine waste for good reason. And you can see some of these comparison values in the United States in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the US EPA adopted standards for cleanup of uranium mill tailings that had spread out over from the mills onto land in 5 picocuries per gram in the first 6 inches and 15 picocuries per gram in the second 6 inches. That's only the top foot. And that connotes in those concentrations the equivalent uranium concentration that is literally hundreds of times what you see over here in the criteria. So this is why we pay attention to radium-226. DISA said in the treatability study that it can reduce uranium and radium concentrations in the coarse fraction. We'll only talk about the coarse fraction because that's what left on site, by 92 to 93%. That wasn't what they found in the lead up to the Black Range minerals ore production back in 2015 and 16. It was much less. But when you look at exhibits 3, 4, and 5 in the treatability study, there's a wide range of contaminant reduction from less than 50% for the waste at the Cove Transfer Station up to 85 to 98 for uranium and 71 to 92% for radium-226 in waste at the old Church Rock mine. The coarse fraction, and DISA has been saying that the coarse fraction is clean fill and it can be left on site after ablation processing. But in our review of the treatability study, the upper end of the range of residual uranium and radium concentrations after ablation all exceed those comparison values. And in no case would ablated waste satisfy the residential release criteria, and in the majority of cases would not satisfy the sheep camp criteria. But I have to remind everybody, those criteria, to our knowledge, have never been adopted as regulations by the Navajo Nation, and that's something that we recommend be done once there's a public vetting of those criteria. The fine fraction contains the high concentrations of uranium, especially, and that's where it is separated out, put into trucks to transport large, apparently to the Energy Fuels blanding mill for uranium recovery. And I would note that the Dene Natural Resources Protection Act, which was enacted by the Navajo Council in 2005 and signed into Navajo law by then President Joe Shirley, is Section 3 1303 says there should be no uranium mining and processing in Navajo Indian country. And so if ablation generates fines for reprocessing or processing, that potentially runs up against the DNRPA's ban. Now, this is a lot of numbers, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible here. In these gray rows here, you see that I've listed the raw waste stream. So the treatability study took samples of the waste that was collected. And in uranium, that waste ranged from 40 to 490 milligrams per kilogram or parts per million. And that was after 30 minutes of ablation. That compares, it's very high compared to the crustal average. Same way with radium. The waste streams went from roughly 20 picocuries per gram all the way up to 228. So if you want to kind of know what the status or the risk associated with uranium mine waste, you look at these numbers and compare them to the crustal averages, and then you can look at them and compare them to these proposed criteria, both at the Cavera site in Church Rock, Redwater Pond Road, and the Cove Transfer Station, right? So the red indicates that the upper end of the range is above these criteria. Would not satisfy the residential or the sheep camp standards. That's where we get this from. And again, I've only shown you, well, this is in terms of our review of the treatability study, we're giving DISA credit because the more time you spend ablating, the more reduction there is in contaminant levels. 30 minutes, though, is not nearly what would be done in a commercial operation. And I won't go through that. That's all my references and notes. Fast forward to today, and EPA Region 9 has proposed a time-critical removal action at the old Church Rock mine in Church Rock chapter. And for those of you who are familiar with this area, it is on State Route 566, about 6-7 miles north of Church Rock Village off of I-40. The Church Rock mine was actually operated by Phillips Petroleum back in 60 to 62. It was acquired by United Nuclear Corporation and operated underground mine between 1977 and 1982. So it is sat there. It is also the site of a proposed in situ leach operation with the licensee being a company called New Fuels. I'll get to that in a second. So EPA found that there were mine waste that had spread outside of this mine site onto both sides of the highway. Actually, we had defined that in what we called the Church Rock Uranium Monitoring Project, which was conducted with the community between 2002 and 2008 to 10. We charted and documented elevated gamma radiation coming off of the sides of both of the highways and on the neighboring Navajo grazing land, coming obviously from the mine site. EPA has said that they're working on an administrative order on consent with New Fuels to clean up 8,000 cubic yards of waste along the side of the road, and that they would put this back into one of the mine water ponds at the site. I've got a picture of it coming up. And then they expect that DISA would come in and ablate that material as part of its phase 2 verification study. Well, this is what the site looks like. Here's Route 566. Here are Navajo homes and grazing lands. This is the mine site on section 17. The yellow indicates elevated gamma radiation, at least 2 times above background. It's more intense in the middle where The mining took place. These ovals are old mine water ponds that this was an underground mine. And the uranium occurs in aquifers that generate water. And so they have to pump the water out in order to bring miners down underground to get the uranium out. Uh, so this is a contaminated site. And it's been a contaminated site since it was left by United Nuclear back in 1982 when the mining stopped. So we're just now getting around to trying to figure out how to clean this up. So EPA would tell New Fuels, you got to accomplish this. What we've learned is that there's a relationship between New Fuels and DISA, where DISA would perform the remediation of this time critical removal operation. But we don't know who's funding this operation because New Fuels doesn't have a lot of cash flow. It has a license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to conduct in situ leach mining at both this area and just to the north in what we call Section 8. In terms of water use, the treatability study discusses a wide range of water consumption. And this is one of their diagrams that shows the water tanks that they would use because they need a bunch of water. Makeup water is what they would use to do the actual ablation. They would be at 13 gallons a minute for a 50 ton per hour system and 25 gallon minute for a 100 tons per hour system. That means that makeup water would total about 200,000 gallons a month. The processed water, 384,000 gallons per month. This equates to roughly, this is from the treatability study, 40 to 76 water trucks monthly or 2 to 4 water trucks a day. The water would be trucked to each site where high pressure slurry ablation would be implemented. But the source of that water for either the time critical removal action or generally across Navajo is not clear. It wasn't clear in the treatability study, and it wasn't clear in the environmental assessment that NRC conducted in late summer of last year, in which they found there was no significant impact, so they issued a license to DISA, General Services License. In that license, there are several conditions. Condition 19 requires DISA to submit what's called a pre-mobilization notice, or a PMN, at least 90 days prior to mobilizing for any field work. And it covers things like the number of truck trips, operational elements, waste volumes, site descriptions and characterizations, release criteria, and importantly, site-specific decommissioning costs. Another condition in the license requires post-ablation waste characterization, process water, water quality, use and description, and air monitoring during the operations. The license is 11 pages long. I've only touched the surface with several of the important conditions on that license. So DISA can't use that license unless it meets these criteria, those conditions of the license. Now, I've got 2 pages of timeline. We're not going to go through that, but I can tell you this process has been talked about now for several years. The company came to myself and my colleagues at UNM back in 2017 and 18. They then went to the Navajo Nation with their proposal. Navajo ended up supporting the licensing of what the NRC called emerging mine waste treatment programs. And they did a lot of lobbying. The NRC conducted a public process around an environmental assessment last September, moved out of the environmental assessment to us finding a no significant impact, and issued the license all in less than 30 days. That's not how it's been in years past. Those are processes that can take months, if not years. We learned that Navajo Nation had entered into a contract with DISA sometime in September of 2025. So just to sum up the kind of things I've been saying here, DISA's bench scale and batch field tests demonstrated that the course material is not clean and cannot meet Navajo Nation guidelines for residential and sheep camp uses. Again, if those proposed criteria uh, written by Tetra Tech are eventually adopted as regulations by the Navajo Nation. This is a quote in the middle from the treatability study. If ablated mine waste are left on site, they would still have to be managed in a capped repository, which is EPA's preferred remediation method for most AUMs on the Navajo Nation. So the idea behind a third major remediation method is that it would supplant remote disposal or supplant cap in place. And yet, if ablation leaves contaminated materials at a mine site, they would still have to be capped. So it begs the question of what have you accomplished? The batch scale field tests were not done at a scale that represents commercial scale operations. That's the purpose of their phase 2 verification studies. There are practical limitations. We've seen, these are big pieces of equipment. They'll go on flatbed trucks, they'll go out. And many of you know the rugged terrain throughout the Southwest, including on Navajo Nation. There's going to be mine sites that simply can't be reached with that equipment. The water use is substantial and may need a water permit from the Navajo Nation if they tap water sources on the Navajo Nation. But again, we're not privy to knowing where they're going to get the water for these processes. And the pre-mobilization notice does provide an opportunity for public information to disclose the expected operations. So we have several recommendations that we've talked about. These were covered to some extent in the webinar that Linda Williams, my colleague, Wendy Atcity, and Anna Rondon did back on January 27th. First, if there is a contract with DISA from the Navajo Nation, we'd like to see it. Similarly, the agreement between Navajo Nation and Energy Fuels from 2024 governing the transportation of uranium ore and the disposition of 10,000 tons of mine waste, that document, that agreement has not been made public. Navajo EPA and Navajo Justice Department have issued summaries of it. The Tetra Tech report on the Navajo on these remediation criteria is needed, and that could eventually turn into a rulemaking. If the Resources and Development Committee of the Navajo Nation Council has acted to provide tribal funds for the phase 2 verification study, that also needs to be known. It's possible that that citizens could request that USNRC provide notice and opportunity to comment on the pre-mobilization notice. Again, that has to be done 90 days, 3 months prior to mobilizing any equipment to the site. Overall, though, there's really a need to convene meetings with the grassroots communities around Navajo. There's such division these days over what is the appropriate method of dealing with 523 abandoned uranium mines. Well, maybe it's 525. The numbers differ. The point is that there really hasn't been an effort to involve the communities in these difficult uranium policy decisions. We really need to do that. I also would add, I've said many times in public proceedings that part of the reason that we're here and mulling over these remediation criteria, methods, is because the federal government allowed uranium mining and promoted uranium mining for the nuclear weapons program on the Navajo Nation throughout the Western United States in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Roughly 75% of all the abandoned mines throughout the Western United States are what they call defense related. What that means is that the uranium went to the nuclear weapons program. Ergo, as if we apply the standard of the Superfund law, the United States of America is liable and is responsible for those wastes. And yet the United States of America has not provided the kinds of funding and capacity that is needed to make headway on cleaning up this mess that we've all inherited. And it's going to go to the next couple of generations. One of our longtime colleagues, Nadine Padilla, a professor of law at the University of New Mexico, just published an amazing law journal article making the case for the federal government taking responsibility financially and administratively. So I'll leave you with those with this discussion, and I'd be happy to answer questions later on.
Thank you, Chris. That was a lot of good information, a lot to digest. I think I saw a hand raised. We're going to take questions at the end, so feel free to save those questions for a little bit. So a lot of key points there that you covered. Let me try to recap a little bit of them. Any agreements that were made between Navajo EPA and DISA were not public and were made behind closed doors. Nobody's really seen what those agreements are. There's a lot of water consumption issues here. Where are they going to be getting the water for this ablation technology here in this very arid region, correct? They'll also need water permits for this technology. And then who has the water rights, right? And there's also a lack of adequate standards within the Navajo EPA. And I think this is something that Linda Williams had touched on in the previous webinar, is that a lot of these standards too are based off of like white males, right? And we need to have more adequate studies that are inclusive of other folks, not just white males, correct? So those are some of the key points that were captured in the last webinar, but some of the stuff that Chris also shared here. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ms. Terry Kiana. Again, Terry is from the Redwater Pond Road community in Church Rock, New Mexico, ground zero for the 1979 Church Rock spill. And Terry's going to share a little bit about this technology that was introduced to her community, the #1 Superfund site on Navajo Nation, how it was introduced, and kind of what's going on there. So thank you, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Talia. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I was like, oh. So I just wanted to kind of just cover what Chris was talking about earlier. He did ask or did say that I would cover a little bit about the Covera Church Rock 1 mine site, and this was an EPA executive decision. They made it a very, very quick executive action to help the community make an actual move forward in the removal of waste from our community. And so that waste will be relocated to the Red Rock landfill in through New Mexico. And that it's going to be in a newly developed repository, and the uranium mine waste will not be mixed with the municipal waste. And the landowners, basically the people who own the landfill, actually have a lot of experience in keeping track of seepage, and so they constantly monitor that, and so they have the technology and they have the know-how to do that. And so that's something to help people with a little bit of peace of mind, because we are working with somebody who actually knows how to do stuff like that. Granted, they have never developed a repository, but this is something that's going to be new to them. But in general, it's going to be new in a lot of places. And so this is kind of where we have to take it with a grain of salt and understand that we do still need to move forward in order to get cleanup done, and we have to do it in a responsible way. And so this is something that we as a community have been working on, and that project is supposed to be taking maybe about 6 to 8 years. And so that's just kind of an idea of the removal action that's going to be happening. It's less than 1,000,000 cubic yards of waste, but it's pretty much way up there. And so with this new DISA or DISA technology and this new company coming in, the community feels really jaded by the actions of the Navajo Nation, EPA, and Stephen Nitsity, the director. Because when he came to some of our meetings in the community, he was quite smug when the community was against the technology. He made a comment about how we were not kind of listened to when it came to the actions at the GE or United Nuclear Corporation mine site and that removal action. And he made that comment, and he actually asked us, well, how is that going, you know, getting that removal? And it was really awful because he was so smug about it, but he was traveling. It wasn't just him. It was him and Leonard Sosi. They were traveling together, and Leonard Sosi was actually advocating for Stephen Nitsity, saying, you guys need to stop picking on him. You guys need to stop telling lies. He was saying things like that to us as a community, and we didn't even know where that kind of energy came from. And so we didn't really understand what was going on and why they were pushing it so much. And they wanted to introduce that technology, and it hasn't been really tested in a large amount as what they're talking about. And they're promising all these things, and yet they haven't really done it in a large scale. And so this is going to be basically another pilot project. And the community's kind of, you know, not too enthusiastic about being a pilot project for US EPA, for Navajo Nation EPA. And, you know, it's just another corporation making more money. The Navajo Nation is a corporation. And if you didn't know that, and you've ever speeded on Navajo land and you had to pay a ticket, you pay that ticket not to the Navajo Nation Police Department. You actually pay that ticket to the Navajo Nation. And so that kind of just shows you that the Navajo Nation is a corporation and it just wants to make more money. And it's making its money over its people. The people were not listened to as a community. And the new DISA project, the community was against ablation and the whole process of ablation because of the water intensive actions that are going to be taken. And we live in the desert, and so it doesn't make sense to utilize so much water for a process that is not even something that's going to actually yield a lot of uranium. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to separate the dirt from the uranium so they can make a profit, basically, because it's going to be going to the White Mesa mill or the New Fuels mill. And where does that money go? That money is going to go straight back to them because they're the ones who made that agreement, and the community was just left in the dark. And it just shows you that Stephen Nitsity, and him being smug and talking about how we were not listened to by the US EPA, he's doing the exact same thing with Navajo Nation EPA and not even bothering to actually listen to the community members when we were already against the ablation process. And so him and the Navajo Nation administration left the community in the dark. And at least with the US EPA, they gave us the opportunity to try to advocate for ourselves and learn and at least have a say in what happens to the waste, even though it was only going across the street with the situation with the Church Rock mine and General Electric than their property. And so it just, the community has been going through this for so long, and it's this type of frustration and this type of just cold shoulder action that has really caused the community to feel this jadedness. And we're tired of not being listened to. We're tired of our own government, our own Navajo Nation government, just dismissing the fact that we've been fighting to have a clean home, a clean place, and yet they are ready to just try to do this ablation process, creating more waste and not really making an actual solution. And there's really gonna not be any resolution for the ablation process because they still don't know where a lot of that waste is going to go. And it the proposal is for it to go to White Mesa Mill, and yet that mill and the waste that the tailings ponds sit right on Navajo aquifers, and so we're still damaging the environment. We're still adding more contamination to a lot of our water tables. And so this is not a good action considering that it's already water intensive, and once we get the waste to the mill, it's going to be sitting on top of another aquifer. And so it doesn't make sense. And the community has expressed this over and over that they did not want any waste to go to White Mesa, to the New Fields mill. And we did not want our brothers and sisters in the Ute Mountain area to have to deal with more waste. They already deal with the mill. And a couple of years ago, Yolanda Badbat had the most awful news ever to come to her when we were at the Western Mining Action Network conference, and she had a private company test the water, and she found out that their water table is contaminated, and all the water that they utilize for drinking, for cooking, for just basic living and basic needs is contaminated. And then she had to, even though she was far away, and she was in Canada, and that's a long way to be from home. And she still rallied, and she got together with a lot of the community members, and she started getting people bottles of water. And so we can't keep doing this. We can't keep living like this. This is a devastation on our people, and we're all indigenous people that are just trying to keep our little slice of heaven the way it was, the way it is, and the way it should be. And it's something that we're advocating for our children and our grandchildren. This is not ours. This is not our land. This is a piece of land that we're borrowing from our children and their children. And so we're only here to be stewards and to have our own Navajo Nation EPA director to be smug like that towards our community and dismiss what we've asked and said repeatedly, that we didn't want more mining, and ablation is just another mining process, and we didn't want any more transport. And yet Navajo Nation has this agreement with the Pinyon mine, and they're trucking it from Navajo Nation and into the Ute community. And so this is just another devastation after another devastation that we've already had to see and have already experienced. And so, as a community member, this is something that my entire community feels strongly about, that this agreement is not really a plan for or a resolution for the reclamation of our community, but actually just another scheme of making money. And so that's how our community has been seeing it. And we've we've seen a change in Stephen City. He used to be an advocate for us. He was one of our strongest champions, and now he's running around talking about this DISA technology and praising it and everything like that. And I don't know where that change happened, and it's disappointing and it's concerning, especially because he's got Leonard Sosi as well, advocating for this and for him. And it it just seems like our community was already fighting with the US EPA, and now we have to fight against the Navajo Nation EPA and against our own people. And it's really disheartening, because we're supposed to be talking about how we're supposed to be relatives, and we're supposed to be talking about death. And that's something that our Navajo Nation leadership is not implementing in their daily lives. And it's something that our community has been trying to teach to our young ones. And so we're always accepting of people. And even for the US EPA, we've accepted a lot of the people from the US EPA, because they have actually become one of our greatest champions now, because they're the only ones who tried to listen to us now with this whole ablation. And they've pushed back as well, but now it's an agreement that they can't really fight anymore. And so we have to be okay with that as a community. And it's not okay, because we were never asked, we were never consulted, there was no consent or anything. And so our community has been overlooked, and it's a tough spot for our community to be in, but it is the spot that we're in now. And so um, having advocates such as Chris and Talia and the MACE coalition, the Multicultural Alliance for a Safe Environment, having them as our allies has been the biggest help that we could ever really ask for, because of all their knowledge and everything that they have studied and researched. And so this is kind of where our community sits on the whole ablation process and the DISA project. So that's kind of all I have for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah. That was really powerful. Thank you for sharing your perspective, from your community who has been on the front line with this ablation technology. Again, this is a private commercial partnership between the Navajo EPA and DISA Technologies Incorporated, right? What they've done, like Terry mentioned, US EPA was pushed out of the table. They told them to go home, that they were no longer needed. And so now Navajo EPA and DISA Technologies is working together, and they're trying to push this ablation technology forward, and trying to take full control over it. Again, not sharing this information publicly with the communities. This is why we're here. We're asking for transparency. We're asking for information, comprehensive information for our communities who are going to be impacted by this ablation technology, right? And it's extraction. It's not quote unquote cleanup, it's extraction. And that's what we need to continue to hone in on, is that this is violating our law, our ban against uranium mining within Navajo Nation. And what's happening here on Navajo is really, you know, we have a large land base. We have a lot of abandoned uranium mines. This is going to set the precedent of what happens in other frontline communities who are impacted by abandoned uranium mine waste. So we have to stand our ground. We have to hold the line, and we have to push back. You know, and these folks, like Terry mentioned, there's a lot of people who have been in tribal leadership here on Navajo, like Leonard Sosi, like Stephen at City, who are now on the who have gone to the dark side, like we say, and are working with, you know, the industry and really trying to push this forward. So again, we're pushing forward and trying to educate our communities and demand transparency and justice. I want to go ahead and introduce our next panelist, Ms. Anna Rondon from the New Mexico Social Justice and Equity Institute. Anna is a longtime organizer and advocate, a Diné matriarch, and she's been holding the line for a really long time and was really one of the leaders who spurred action when it came to ablation and calling it out here on Navajo. So I want to go ahead and pass the mic to Anna. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yat A Nana. So in December of last year, that's where I was alerted about the support resolution at the Eastern Navajo Agency Council. And so immediately reaching out to our usual suspects, Care, Mace, Natalia with IEN, and with our ally that we met at our film festival, Linda Williams. And I want to thank Linda too for putting the fire and getting us to address this issue and getting the word out to the public. These bullets here are taken from a resolution that's going to be presented March 7th at the Eastern Navajo Agency Council at Naizi chapter. It starts at 9 a.m. But these are some of the language that's in the resolution. But DISA technologies, the use of the high pressure slurry ablation pilot project, yes, but also we're again being guinea pigs, you know, after 80 years of being an experiment of the United States government. And it really heightens the contamination, and you know, these are like risk factors that we see, knowing what our people have already experienced regarding the lies that the corporations would tell us, the lies that Department of Energy, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, conjuring up, manufacturing false narratives. And right today with this administration, the push has become more, and I think, you know, the first term that Trump was in, a lot of this technology and the talks of this industry, the nuclear weapons and energy industrial complex, it is now have coupled with folks with Blackstone and Elon Musk and others that want these data centers. So looking at this ablation, of course, it's for profit. It's not for protecting the public. And that is why I believe the push for this project is huge, and we are being slandered publicly by Leonard Sosi and being disrespected publicly by Stephen at City. And we did have a decent relationship in terms of cleaning up uranium mine waste with Navajo EPA. But now with a lot of these leaders, they're aging out. And what usually happens with our Navajo political leadership is after they leave their position, they become consultants for these corporations, for these companies. So there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of suspicion as expressed earlier. So giving the public adequate information, full disclosure, even with these agreements with the companies, needs to have, the people need to have access to that. And we hope to get those agreements to the public once we make those requests to Navajo Nation EPA and to the Department of Justice. So the concerns of not disclosing who's funding all of this is another issue. We just learned that Valor Investors, Antonio Gracias is the CEO. He created this company about 25 years ago in Chicago. And he's been close friends with Elon Musk for the past 25 years as well. So we see this effort to get the uranium for profit and to have these small nuclear reactors that would power the data centers. But just remember, this would take years to do. And in reality, the political landscape is going to change. So in reality, what we're doing, the Navajo Nation, is a favor by educating the people and to stop this project. Because it's going to become entangled in legalities of the fight, the jurisdictions. And when new leadership comes in, a lot of our laws can be restored back. So in looking into the future, the grassroots people are going to save the Navajo Nation from this project. And hopefully we'll stop it. It's a red alert for indigenous country because of the 14 other states that DISA Technologies company has a license to do this high pressure slurry ablation. Now, I think the audience, if there's anything that you're going to learn tonight, is that term, high pressure slurry ablation. I had a hard time remembering it, but you're hearing it over and over, and that's how we learn together. But it's important to understand also the encroachment of these large multi-billion-dollar companies coming on our lands for these data centers. So there's a big connection. And let's also remember that there's other folks with Blackstone, Greenview, Tallgrass. They're on the western part of our reservation. And Blackstone's trying to get into New Mexico's public utility company. So there's a master plan for the 4 states, these 4 corners, because of our resources. And now that we have rolling back all of our protections of environmental protections, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, and that's why this is being pushed. Valor Investors invested $30 million to DISA last year. There's going to be more money. There's going to be a rainfall that they're calculating. That's why Leonard Sosi, who has been pro-uranium mining for over 20-something years, and Stephen City partnering with these companies is a big conflict of interest. even our resources committee chairwoman. We need to have full disclosure. I would even like to ask forensic inspections of the emails the past 4 years that have been going on with Leonard Sosi and Stevenette City. And now Boo Nygren, who's officially signing off on these agreements. Somebody's getting paid, somebody's being promised. Our other delegates, Richie Nez, who's sold on this technology. It's a disgrace to the Navajo people. It is abomination of the Navajo Nation, Diné fundamental law. It's a direct violation of Changing Woman teachings. It's a direct assault, again, when we talk about statutory authority that Stevenette City says that he has. Changing Woman has statutory authority, and our Mother Earth has statutory authority on the uranium because we were told to leave it alone. With this project, you're getting concentrated uranium, which belongs to our Mother Earth. It's her protection. It wasn't to go and kill people. It wasn't to create mine waste. It wasn't to create deformed babies. We must stop this project by any means necessary. This is dangerous. I do not know why these Navajo leaders do not honor Diné fundamental laws, our ceremonies, Changing Woman, our Earth Mother, our Father Universe. This is why we are a nation, is because of our culture, our language. This is why we fight. This is why we fight for the protection of not only today, but for the future generations. And that's why the Natural Resources Protection Act was approved. You can go to the next slide. So, as what was mentioned earlier, all the lies within this technical transability study that they did, it's not truthful, and they're twisting the facts, just like what Chris Shuey mentioned. All the data, the science behind it does not justify this project. It does not justify having people that are also tied to Epstein to be coming on our lands. Missing and murdered Indigenous people. Whenever these corporations come in, more of our people end up murdered or missing. Why is our leadership, Resources Development Committee, Navajo Nation president allowing this to happen? Like I mentioned, if you can go to the next slide. Are they still here? No. Well, I think in closing, we only got, oh my God, we only got 6 minutes. Just let me, these were already talked about, but one here is the Community Right to Know Act. That's a statute under CERCLA, which is the Superfund law. So this is from since 1992. I'm going to read it just to kind of give you a little context on why we started this. In just 1986, there was the first moratorium on uranium mining by Peterson Zaw that was announced in Cameron at that supposed cleanup remediation project. The Navajo Nation welcomes the important dialogue taking place in the World Uranium Hearing. I thank you for the opportunity to offer a statement. The Navajo people joined the indigenous populations of the countries all over the world and in to sound the alarm. Not only are we and our precious Mother Earth in danger, but all life faces the threat of extinction by radiation. It is the folly of man that has unleashed the dark power of uranium. It is only now that we are beginning to see the consequences. The Navajo people are victims. I'm sorry, I can't finish. I'm sorry.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
everyone.
That's okay. Thank you. Ihiahat. This is hard. This is very emotional. This is very traumatizing, even work for a lot of us who are on the front lines, who have been doing this work for a long time. So please send your prayers and love to our frontline warriors. You got to have thick skin and a heart of gold to do this work. So we want to give a shout out to all the warriors out there who are confronting the nuclear fuel chain from Navajo homelands and beyond. We stand with you in solidarity. This is a big issue again, and it's a multi-generational effort that's going to take us, and unfortunately, our children are going to be facing these consequences as well. And so it really is important for us who are here to stand up, educate ourselves, talk about these issues, educate our children, and to continue to stand strong. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. We have about 3 minutes left. I do want to try to answer at least 2 or 3 questions. I know we had a couple in the chat, so let me try to find the ones that I saw. Also, I think we have one in the Q&A, so we'll start there. Is there a longitudinal study on the health of Navajo Nation members? Chris, you might be able to speak to that with the health studies that Shirk has been a part of, and you too, Anna, with the Navajo birth cohort.
Well, yes, there's been several studies. They're ongoing now, including the birth cohort study. There have been, last time I counted, almost 20 peer-reviewed scientific papers that have been written as a result of some of these studies. But the way that health studies go, it's really difficult to take a unit as big as the Navajo Nation and try to make broad generalizations and findings about how people are affected. Um, in our Dene project that I've been working on with my colleague Esther Erdy at UNM and Don Maloney and all Sandy Ramon and all these people out in the Eastern Agency 20 chapters, we essentially found over the years that living near abandoned uranium mines increases your risk of a variety of metabolic diseases, hypertension, autoimmunity, and kidney disease, especially during the mining period. It was startling to see that newborns in the birth cohort study had detectable levels of uranium in their urine on the day they were born. Before going into that study, the conventional wisdom was that the heaviest of metals, and uranium is the heaviest naturally occurring metal on the face of the earth, were blocked by the placental barrier from transferring from mother to unborn baby. We now know that that's not true. This we don't know, however, what that means for that particular baby or for babies in general. Um, uh, they're looking at a number of health indicators for children in the birth cohort study now. We've just started health studies for the first time ever in the Pueblo of Laguna, which hosted the Jack Pile uranium mine that operated from 52 to 82, when underwent some perfunctory reclamation in late 80s into the 90s and was declared a Superfund site in 2012. It's taken parts of 40 years to do what people in that community had asked back during the days when the mining was taking place, to study the health of the people. So that's occurring now, but we won't have results for that for, for a while. Nonetheless, I have recently been giving talks in which I'm trying to amalgamate the findings of all these various studies into some, understandable rubric. Um, and we're still working on that. So I would just leave it to say that uranium as an element has no biological importance for the human organism. It's essentially a poison. It has no health benefits. It has no um, uh, benefit of in the communities, because when you look around Navajo, in every direction, including in the center, there's nothing but impact from uranium. Um, I don't see it going away anytime soon. So it's prudent to take a very um, uh, stringent view to the cleanup, to the isolation of these wastes. That's why I'm worried, like a lot of other people are, on cap in place, because those facilities, those mines could, through the natural processes of wind and water erosion, could be released to the environment long after some of us who are here now are gone. That's not a legacy that I think any of us want to leave. So, um, yeah, there's plenty of reason to think and know that uranium mining has not benefited the Navajo people or anybody in the Western United States, other than perhaps the companies that made money off of it. And unfortunately, so that's what I can say quickly.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, there's a lot to cover. I know an hour and a half is not nearly enough time for us to go over a lot of these issues. The nuclear fuel chain is huge. There's a lot of impacts, and there's a lot of frontline communities who are facing these issues. So, again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We appreciate you taking time to come and join us and learn a little bit about high pressure slurry ablation. We hope to continue this webinar. Our coalition partners, we're kind of taking turns on taking the lead. Danette Care helped lead the first webinar. IEN is helping to lead the second, and then maybe one of our next coalition partners will take the lead in organizing another one. But we will keep you all posted. We know there's a lot of technical information to unpack. There's a lot of nuances. So we want to acknowledge that. And again, we hope to share more information as time marches on and as we learn more and as we engage in the communities and gathering information. So thank you all again for coming this evening. We love all the frontline communities, all the frontline warriors who are doing the work. We honor you. Thank you for staying strong and for your sacrifices for your families, communities, and for the greater good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists and all our community partners who made time to pull this webinar together this evening. Again, feel free to follow us. Check out the first webinar on YouTube. Look under Dooda DISA on YouTube, and you'll be able to find the first webinar. We also dropped a link in the chat, and we can also share those links on our social media sites as well. Thank you, everybody.
You did great. Thank you, Talia.
Oh, anybody want to give a shout out before we close it down? Okay, we're all good then. Hagoshi. Take care, everybody. And stay strong. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.